All right, we'll say good morning. I'm sorry we're getting a little bit of a later start. There's some technical difficulties. Firstly, Yeshikot to everyone who is here for Yom Tov, a beautiful, beautiful Yom Tov, beautiful two blot of Daf Yomi over the last 2 days as well. Really incredible, very, very special. And now we find ourselves today, Baruch Hashem, on Daf Mem Gimel. We left off yesterday on the bottom of Mem Beis Amud Beis. We left off. The Gemara says, right, the Kuli Alma Mias Halach Rabbi Gamliel B'Sfina. So what we're going to pick up, actually, I'm sorry, I take that back. We left off, Baruch Hashem, the last two lines of Mem Beis Amud Beis, 42b, V'Rabbi Zera. I want to begin by thanking our sponsors, to thank Steve and Terry Zinn for dedicating all of the Shiurim and Drushos this month in memory of their parents, Tzvi Hirsch ben Yosef HaKohen, Yentel Mindel Bas David Halevi, Bunin Tzvi ben Chaim, and Devorah Bas Yisrael Yoel. We also thank our Week of Learning sponsors, Zevin Isabel Greiner, in memory of Isabel's father, David Levine, David ben Yitzchak Eli Halevi Zichron Lebracha. So also with that, let us continue. Rabbi Zera, my time below Makrab. So also remember, we ended off yesterday with a very riveting machlokes between Rabbah and Rabbi Zera. The Gemara on one hand said that the halacha follows Rabbi Gamliel by sfina, namely that if you find yourself on a boat over the course of Shabbos, even if the boat has left its tchum, halacha l'maisa, one is permitted to traverse the entire area of the boat. So the machlokes as to why that was. So Rabbi said, since you established your domicile inside of the walls of the boat, so the walls of the boat are the mechitzas, and therefore again, halacha l'maisa, you are permitted to go ahead and remain. So you're in the mechitzas of the boat, and therefore the entire boat is your dalet amos. Rabbi Zera says something very interesting. Since the boat is traveling, every time you travel out of your tchum, you are given a renewed dalet amos. So because of that, you are permitted to go ahead and keep traveling over the course of the boat, because essentially you're being given another dalet amos each and every time. So it says the Gemara, Rabbi Zera, my time for Makarabba. Why didn't Rabbi Zera hold like Rabbah? So the Gemara says, Amalecha mechitzos top of Mem Gimel lahavriach mayim asuyos, because he held that the mechitzos, the walls, are not meant to go ahead and enclose an area. Rather, they are meant in order to go ahead and keep out water. It's an interesting idea. So the only time that mechitzos work to enclose an area is when they're meant to enclose an area, but the mechitzos of a boat are meant to keep out the water, not to enclose the area. The Rabbah, my time, Rabbi Zera. Why doesn't Rabbah hold like Rabbi Zera? Listen to this. Also, listen to this. Rabbah says to Rabbi Zera, I agree with you. When the boat is moving, then yes, Einachinami, that is correct. I agree with you that when the boat is moving, halacha l'maisa, you are given a renewed dalet amos every moment. Because as soon as the boat continues to move out of the tchum, every time the boat moves, another dalet amos. Kipligi, Bisha'amda. When's the machlokes? I will say the machlokes between Rabbi Gamliel and everyone else is ultimately again when the boat is docked. So we'll say a number of you asked me this shaila after the shir yesterday, because again the Gemara talks about all the nafkaminas between Rabbah and Rabbi Zera. The simplest nafkamina is what? When the boat is docked. When the boat is docked, halacha l'maaseh, if you hold that the reason you can carry throughout the entire boat is because the boat is enclosed, then halacha l'maaseh, whether the boat is moving, not moving, it doesn't make a difference. But if you hold the reason you're permitted to carry throughout the entire boat is because as long as the boat moves, it's constantly getting new dalet amos. That's only true if the boat moves. But if the boat is docked, then halacha l'maaseh, again, there's no additional dalet amos. To which the Gemara says, you're right. So keep ligi b'sha'amda. The machlokes also between Rabbah and Rabbi Zera is in a case ultimately where the boat itself is docked. So the Gemara says, the original Nasi machlokes Rabbi and Rabbi Zera really meaning the machlokes Rabbi Gamliel and everyone else. So Amrav Nachman Bar Yitzchak Mas Nisinami Deka did beMahalechas Lo Pligi. So Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak said the truth is we can infer, this is clear from the Mishnah, that the machlokes is only when the boat is standing still, when the boat is docked. But when the boat is moving, there is no machlokes. How do I know this? Mimai, diktani, maise shabau, mi palndarsin, behifligas sinasalem. Because also the Mishnah recorded a story. And the story was that one time, these Rabbanim were on the boat, and they were coming from Palandarsin, and what happened? There's fligas sinasan bayom. The boat was adrift or was set sail in the water. Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, halchu eskula. So Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, they went ahead and they walked throughout the boat. For Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Akiva, lo zozu me arba amos sheratzu lahachmir alatzman. But ultimately, again, Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Akiva did not move out of the Dalit Amos of the boat. Why? Because they wanted to be machmir on themselves. So the Gemara says, "I amrit bishlam mahaleches lo pligi." So we'll say, if you hold that everyone agrees that when the boat is moving, you could carry throughout the entire boat. Why? Because after all, you're being given a new Dalit Amos every time you move out of the Tchum. So if everybody agrees that when the boat is moving, you could carry throughout the entire boat, Hainu diktani ratsu. The Gemara says, we'll say that's why it makes sense when it says, Rabbi Elazar ben Azari, then it says that Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Akiva wanted to be machmir on themselves. They wanted to be machmir. So we'll say, the lashon of ratzu lahachmir atzman sounds like me'ikar adin, there was no problem carrying on the boat. They wanted to be more machmir on themselves. So the lashon wanted it to be more. That makes sense if you hold that halacha l'maisa. When the boat is moving, everyone agrees that you could carry it throughout the entire boat, but they want to be more machmir on themselves. Eli amrit pligi. But if you know that the machlokes applies even when the boat is moving, hi ratzu lahachmir isuru. How can you say they wanted to be machmir according to Imam Mishnah Isser? Ravashi masnisin amideka. So ultimately, Ravashi is bringing another raya from Mishnah. So we'll say with Gemara suggesting here is as follows: that the machlokes between Rabbi Gamliel / Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, and Rabbi Yoshua and Rabbi Akiva, two groups of Rabbanim, is dafka when the boat is standing still. Dafka when the boat is standing still. So the first opinion, Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Yoshua, will hold that halacha l'maisa, the boat is considered one area of Dalit Amos. Pashtus, it sounds like, according to Rabbah, because the boat has mechitzas, the boat has walls, therefore it's enclosed. But conversely, Rabbi Yoshua, conversely, Rabbi Yoshua, Rabbi Akiva will hold that halacha l'maisa, those mechitzas are not real mechitzas, because they're not there to enclose, they're there to push or keep water out. But everyone agrees that when the boat is moving, you are permitted to carry throughout the entire boat. Why? Because when the boat is moving, I'll say every time the boat moves, again, especially outside of the Tchum, you're given another Dalit Amos out when you're outside of your Tchum. So essentially, there's a constant refreshing of the Dalit Amos, which effectively enables you to carry throughout the entire boat. So the Gemara is just trying to prove that point from the Mishnah. Ravashi, another eye from the Mishnah. Diktani, because we learned Sfina Dumya de Dir V'Sar. Because also remember again, in the Mishnah, they grouped Sfina, boat, together with Dir and Sahar, which means the corral and the pen. Ma Dir V'Sar Dikvi, just like the corral and the pen are established, set stationary areas. Sfina Nami Dikviya. So to the boat in question, I will say ultimately is as well. Gone ahead, it is set in place. Amar le Rav Acha, Ravashi. Hilchasa Rabbi Gamliel B'Sina. So I'll say the halacha follows Rabbi Gamliel by a boat. So therefore, I will say halacha l'maisa. The Gemara is saying is a boat is considered to be an enclosed area, whether the boat is moving, whether the boat is stationary, and therefore, should you find yourself on a boat over the course of Shabbos, halacha l'mais, you are permitted to carry throughout the entire area of the boat. So the Gemara says, Hilchos ha-mechlal de-pligi. So you say that the halacha follows Rabbi Gamliel. That makes it sound like someone argues on that. That is, someone does argue. V'hatanya, and we'll say, in V'hatanya, Rashi points out, b'nichusa. And that is correct. V'hatanya will support that by the following. So the Gemara says, Ben achi Rabbi Yeshua Omer, kol osa hayom yashvu v'danu b'dvar halacha. So this is very interesting. So remember again, this is a follow-up to the story. The story in the Mishnah was, remember, one time they were traveling from Palm Darsin, and what happened? The boat was at sea. So remember again, then the Mishnah says, Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Eliezer carried throughout the entire boat. Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Akiva did not move from their Dalit Amos, for they wanted to go ahead and be machmir on themselves. Okay. Now the Gemara gives the rest of the story. Well, this is incredible. What's the rest of the story? So we'll say So for Shabbos, they're on a boat. They're on a boat. So what happened? So the Gemara says, Chananya ben Akri B'Shua said, Kolos hayom yoshvu v'danu b'dvar halacha. So how did they spend their Shabbos? How did these four Rabbanim, Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Akiva, and Rabbi Eliezer, how did they spend their Shabbos? They went ahead and they argued this case the entire Shabbos. Emes shechriya achi abba lach Rabbi Gamliel b'sina, lach Rabbi Akiva b'dir b'sahar. And they established a boat that what? So originally, before they got on the boat, ultimately there was machlokes. Then what happened? They spent Shabbos on a boat, and they were able to work it through. But sometimes nothing is better for conflict resolution than being stuck in a room with a person. So what happened? They were arguing. This machlokes is going on. Then what happens? All four of these rabbanim are stuck on a boat together for Shabbos, and suddenly again they're able to go ahead and work out the issue. How did they resolve it? They said that halacha follows Rabbi Gamliel ultimately by Sfina, which means that halacha l'maisa, the entire boat is considered to be an enclosed area, and therefore halacha l'maisa you carry throughout the entire Dalet Amos. But the halacha follows Rabbi Akiva ultimately bedir v'sahar, because Rabbi Akiva held that halacha l'maisa in the dir v'sahar, in the pen or in the enclosure. Ultimately, again, Rabbi Akiva said you only have Dalet Amos. Now, we'll see, in fact, who the halacha follows in these cases. But one thing is clear, which is no one is arguing on Rabbi Gamliel regarding the Sfina. No one is arguing on that. And therefore, say that is halacha l'maisa. That's how the Shulchan Aruch paskins that a boat is considered to be an enclosed area, and therefore, should one find oneself on a boat over the course of Shabbos, one would be permitted to carry throughout the entire boat. Now, we'll say the truth is, more modern day cruise ships have other halachic implications involved in them, but Lamaisa, that's the halacha. Good. We'll say fascinating shayla. What's an interesting shayla? Does the tchum go above 10 tefachim or not? So we'll see here the shayla. So shayla over here is, we know, does the concept of tchum apply above 10 tefachim? Fascinating idea. So as I say, the Gemara says, so if you're talking about, let's say, a pole that is 10 tefachim high and 4 tefachim wide, I'm not talking about that. Why? The arismichti, because we'll say that's considered to be like thick ground. So we'll say, meaning if you have a pole that is 10 tefachim high, 4 tefachim wide, which means it occupies a significant amount of space, that's just considered to be like a tall mound. Like a tall mound. That's not what we're asking. So the Gemara says, Kiti Bailucha, where does the kasha come up? Ba'amud Gavoa Asara, the Inaracha Barba. We'll say, what happens if the pillar is 10 tefachim high, but is not 4 tefachim wide? Inami, the other possibility is the Ka'azal B'Kfitza. Or we'll say again, what happens if someone jumps? That's somebody supposed to say, you can imagine this case? Let's say you're a pole vaulter. So we'll say, can you imagine this situation? So let's say you go, we'll say, I'll tell you why this is very important. Very important. What it's asking is like this. I know, right? Remember, this is yesterday's daf. What happens if I don't know my tchum? What happens if I don't know my tchum Shabbos? What do I do? What do I do? Right? I walk 2,000 average steps. That's my tchum. What happens if I don't walk the way? What happens if I jump? So I say, see here what the shaila is? The shaila is the area that I jump, is that counted in the 2,000 amma calculation? Or do I say no? As long as I am lamala from 10 tefachim, there's no tchum above 10 tefachim. We'll say, which means then that area doesn't count towards the calculation of the tchum. We'll say this is incredibly important because what this means is you could dramatically increase the size of your tchum if you are a talented jumper, right? And if you are able to go ahead and get some height on your jump, and you're able to go ahead and get above 10 tefachim, you could significantly increase your tchum. So that's the shayla. Lishna achrina, v'sfina mai. So we'll say the other possibility is they're asking, we'll say this has an implication by a boat, because presumably a boat floats 10 tefachim above the seabed. So we're talking this whole thing about carrying on a boat, not carrying on a boat, but is a boat even subject to the halachos of tchum? So we'll say a riveting shayla. So Rav Oshia, Tashma, well, apparently a boat is subject to a tchum, even though it's the malam yud. Why? Because we'll say this homach locus came up on a boat. Right? And remember again, this homach locus, whether or not you can carry on the boat or say, is directly related to the discussion about tchum. So we'll say, let's take a step back. Remember again the case with the boat. So they floated out. So Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Yoshua carried on the entire boat. Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva wanted to be machmir on themselves and only carried dalet amos. Now the fact that they wanted to be machmir on themselves, what does that tell me? So if the din of tchum applies lamala miyud, then I understand why they wanted to be machmir on themselves. However, Eli amrit in tchumin amaratzu. But I will say, if there's no tchum lamala miyud, then what? Why they need to be machmir? I will say, remember again, the whole discussion by the boat was a concern that the boat had floated outside of the tchum. So Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Eliezer said, oh, we only have daled amos. That only makes sense if you hold that tchum applies lamala miyud. But if tchum doesn't apply lamala miyud, the boat is definitely above 10 tefachim above the seabed. There should be no discussion regarding tchum. To which the Gemara says, so also remember again, you could have a situation where the boat is navigating in shallow waters. Rakak literally means mud. So the boat is navigating in shallow waters. And Einachinami, you could be talking about a boat that is within Yud Tfachim of the seabed. Now, as Rabbi said, the discussion begins by taking it for granted that, of course, a boat is above Yud, to which the Gemara says maybe not. Boats navigate in shallower waters as well. So maybe the boat in question is Lamata Miyud. So the Gemara says, Tashma, Bosake, another raya. Tashma. So let's remember again the second story in the Mishnah, which hopefully we'll get to today. The second story in the Mishnah was one time the boat was coming into port, and remember again their shaila was were they within the tchum already at the start of Shabbos or not? So the Gemara says as follows. So we'll say so same thing. If you hold that there is tchum l'mala miyud, then it makes sense why they had a kasha, were we in the tchum or not. But if you hold that the din of tchum does not apply l'mala miyud, kilo hayino b'socha tchum ma'havi. Then Abba say, who cares if the boat was out of the tchum at the onset of Shabbos? If they were the l'mala miyud, which we are presupposing a boat is generally l'mala miyud, so then what's the kasha? Amarava ma'alachas reracha. So the Gemara gives the same answer. The boat is not raya because you could be dealing with the case of a boat that is navigating, we'll call it in muddier waters, which means shallow waters. Shallow waters. So I'll say, so therefore I just want to point out, very simple kasha. Does the tchum apply at a height of 10 tefachim or above or not? So right now, we've tried to prove that from a couple of different places. We've been unsuccessful so far. We've been unable to prove that one way or the other. So the Gemara says, Tashma, this is incredible. We'll say incredible. Hani Shev Shmai said this, Amram B'Tzafra B'Shabsa, Kamei Rav Chisda B'Sura. We'll say one time, there was a shir that was given. There were 7 rulings. There were 7 rulings that were given in the morning and before Rav Chisda in Surah. So we'll say one Shabbos morning, there was a shir given by Rav Chisda, and they advanced 7 novel new rulings in Surah. Bahadi Panya B'Shabsa, that same afternoon, that same Shabbos afternoon, they relayed these teachings. Kamei Derava B'Pumpadisa. They went ahead and they gave over the Isim Halakas before Rav and Pumpadisa. Also, there's only one problem. Surah and Pumpadisa are not within the tchum of one another. So how did someone get from Surah to Pumpadisa to go ahead and convey these rulings? To which the Gemara says, Manamrinu, both say this is a wild Gemara. So who said it over? Who was the messenger who brought the Torah from Surah in the morning to Pumpadisa in the afternoon when those 2 cities are not within the tchum of one another? Both say, remember again, you can extend your tchum, but that only goes so far. So remember again, I could go within my 2,000 amas, and I can go ahead and put my eruv at the edge of my 2,000 amas. What does that give me? Another 2,000 amas. So I'll say, so really the most you're going to end up getting on Shabbos is a total of 3,999 amas in which to go ahead and travel. But that's it. The distance in Surah and Pumpadisa is much greater. So how is it that the teachings that were related on Shabbos morning in Surah were able to be related in Pumpadisa in the afternoon? Say, get ready for this. The Gemara says, it must have been Lav Eliyahu Amrin. It must be Eliyahu Navi. Of course. I was like, what's the shaila? What's the shaila? Of course, it must have been Eliyahu Hanavi. See, Rabbi said, you see, here's the greatness of Klal Yisrael. You see, sometimes if you're cynical and not a member of Klal Yisrael, because Jews don't have cynicism, good Jews don't have cynicism. So I say, so listen to this. So you would say to yourself, it must be a mistaken story. Must be a mistaken story. A Jew says, no, it was Eliyahu Hanavi. It was Eliyahu Hanavi. Incredible. So the Gemara says, Alma, aim tchum l'malam yasar. And I will say, the Gemara presupposes, it's incredible. The Gemara presupposes that how does Eliyahu Hanavi travel? Apparently not by foot, but by flight. I guess he takes the Merkava. He takes the fiery chariot. So therefore, again, you see that, but we assume Eliyahu Hanavi is a from Jew. So therefore, now we know Eliyahu Hanavi is a from Jew. So how would he go ahead and travel outside of the Tchum on Shabbos? Oh, he must have traveled Lamala Miyud. That's how he got from Sur to Pumpadisa. He traveled Lamala Miyud. Alma ain't Tchum Lamala Me'asar. We'll say, isn't this incredible? Therefore, we see from Eliyahu Hanavi the fact that he went from Sur to Pumpadisa is wild. The fact that he went from Sur to Pumpadisa must mean that what? There is no Tchum Lamala Miyud. To which the Gemara says, lo, Dilma Yosef Shida Amrina. Maybe not. Maybe it's Yosef the Shade. Yosef the Shade. I don't know who Yosef the Shade is, but apparently the Gemara didn't know who he was. So the Gemara is suggesting is maybe it wasn't Eliyahu Hanavi, but there was this Yosef Shida. So we'll say Yosef the Shade, and Rashi points out, Dilo Minter Shabbos. He's not a Shomer Shabbos. So this shade is not a Shomer Shabbos. So therefore, by the way, that's not this shade. Apparently shade in general are not Shomer Shabbos. And therefore, maybe it was the shade, which is such an incredible idea. You'll say to yourself, what's happening? So you see that even a shade has some kedusha inside of him, right? That even the shade does something good. It takes the Torah from Surah to Pumpadisa. So we'll say if the shade has something redeeming inside of him, despite being a shade. So Baruch Hashem, imagine each of us, even if we make mistakes, and if we make dramatic mistakes, we do not divest ourselves of the beautiful kedusha which resides with such an incredible yisod. So we'll say, so therefore again, no raya. I still don't know. Is there tchum lamala miyud or not? So Tashma, we'll say, get ready for this case. Harini nazir biyom sheben David ba. I hereby accept upon myself, Meneder, that I will be a nazir on the day that Mashiach comes. So the day that Mashiach comes, I will be a nazir. So what's the halacha? Mutar lishtos yayin v'shabbasos yomim tovim. So we'll say, so the halacha is I'm allowed to drink wine on Shabbos and Yom Tov. Now we'll say, what does that sound like? That's not, well, we'll see. I'm allowed to drink wine on Shabbos and Yom Tov. V'asra on days, v'asra lishtos yayin kol yemos hakol. But I can't drink wine during the weekdays. So again, my nether is I hereby accept upon myself to be a nazir. I'm not going to drink wine, right? I hereby accept upon myself to be a nazir. On the day that Mashiach comes, I can't drink wine Sunday through Friday, but I can drink wine on Shabbos and Yom Tov. So the Gemara says, why is that? So we'll say, if you hold that the din of tchum works, so we'll say again, same idea. We are assuming that halach l'maisa when Mashiach comes, Mashiach is not going to come by foot, but he's going to come by flight. Therefore, again, like this. So we'll say, what does it mean? I say I'm a nazir the day Mashiach comes, and the Gemara says that therefore you could drink wine on Shabbos and Yom Tov. What does that tell me? That Mashiach is not going to come on a Shabbos or a Yom. So the Gemara says, okay, so that makes sense if you hold that there's a din of tchum l'mala miyud. We'll say, first of all, what an incredible simon for the year that we're learning a Mashiach Sugya on Gimel Tishrei, only 3 days into the new year, Baruch Hashem, and we're already learning a Mashiach Sugya. It's going to be a good year in Eretz Hashem. So we'll say, so therefore again, you see from here, so the fact that you can drink wine on Shabbos and Yom Tov indicates that Mashiach is not going to come on Shabbos and Yom Tov. Why won't Mashiach come on Shabbos and Yom Tov? Because Mashiach also has to respect the Tchum. Mashiach also respects the Tchum. And therefore we'll say again, that shows you that what? That there's a din of the Tchum, l'mala miyud, above 10 Tvachim. So again, so if you hold that there is Tchumen l'mala miyud, ha'iniv de b'Shabbos yom tovim mutter. That's why ultimately you could drink wine on Shabbos and Yom Tov, because Mashiach is not going to come on Shabbos and Yom Tov. Why not? Because he's bound by the Tchum. We'll say if you hold that the din of Tchum does not apply l'mala miyud on Shabbos and Yom Tov, amai mutter, then why should you be permitted to drink wine After all, again, it's possible that what? Mashiach will come on Shabbos and Yom Tiv. To which the Gemara says, Shiny Hassam, Mashiach is different. Mashiach is different. The Amar Kra, Hine Anochi Sholech Lachem Es Eliyahu Hanavi. As Abba said, the pasuk tells us that before Mashiach comes, Eliyahu Hanavi will come first. Eliyahu will come first. Eliyahu Hanavi comes to announce the arrival of Mashiach. V'halo asi asa Eliyahu me'esmo. So also listen to this. Comes Shabbos, comes Yom Tiv. I can go ahead and drink wine. Why? I know that Mashiach is not going to come. How do I know that Mashiach is not going to come? Because Eliyahu Hanavi didn't come the day before. So if Eliyahu Hanavi didn't come on Friday, then ultimately again Shabbos, that means Mashiach is not going to come on Shabbos. That means halacha l'maisa, I could drink wine today. Eliyahu Hanavi didn't come on Erev Yom Tiv, therefore halacha l'maisa, I could drink wine on Yom Tiv. Well, 1 second. If that's your argument, ihachi b'chol kol yoma v'yoma nami lishteri v'halo aseh Eliyahu me'esmo. So I'll say make the same argument today. What's today? Today's Monday, right? Today's Monday. I should be able to drink wine today also. Why? Because Eliyahu didn't come yesterday. So we'll say, remember again, what did the Brisa say? A person takes a neder and he says, I'm going to be a Nazir on the day that Mashiach comes. He can't drink wine on any weekday, Sunday through Friday, but he can drink wine ultimately on Shabbos and Yom Tiv. Why could he drink wine on Shabbos and Yom Tiv? Ultimately, again, because comes Shabbos, comes Yom Tiv, Eliyahu Hanavi didn't come the day before, and therefore Mashiach's not going to come that day. Well, if that's the logic, then I should be able to drink wine on the weekdays also. Because again, as long as Eliyahu Hanavi did not come the day before, then ultimately, again, I should be able to drink wine on the following day. So the Gemara says it's also interesting that because remember it says Hine Anochi Shalachem Es Eliyahu Hanavi Lifnei Vo Hayom Hagadol. So it's not just Eliyahu Hanavi precedes Mashiach; it's that Eliyahu Hanavi comes on the day before Mashiach. Day before Mashiach. So it says the Gemara, Elo Amrina LeBeizin Hagadol also. Rather, I'll say, what's the concern? The concern is that no, maybe Eliyahu Hanavi came. Maybe he came already. He just came to the Beis Din Hagadol. Ultimately, again, maybe halacha l'maisa, he came. He revealed himself to the Sanhedrin. He'd come to us to the Sanhedrin, but he just didn't come to us yet. So the Gemara says, Hachanami lema leBeis Din Hagadol also. So we'll say again, why don't I say the same thing over here, right? So again, so you're telling me now that no, maybe Eliyahu Hanavi did come. I just didn't hear about it yet. To which the Gemara says, no. Kvar muftach len liYisrael she'ein Eliyahu ba lo ba'arvei Shabbosos lo ba'arvei Yom Tov. Let's listen to this. We have a Masorah. What's our Masorah? Eliyahu Hanavi will not come on Erev Shabbos or on Erev Yom Tiv. Why? Mipnei hatorech. We'll say this is incredible because Erev Shabbos and Erev Yom Tiv are very busy days. Very busy days. Rashi says mipnei hatorech shemanichin tzarchei Shabbos v'holken lachtupan. We'll say so. Ultimately, they're busy days, and what's going to happen if Eliyahu Hanavi comes? Everyone's going to neglect their Erev Shabbos and Erev Yom Tiv preparations and run to meet Eliyahu Hanavi. And that's going to cause an incredible amount of stress and difficulty then when people have to get ready for Shabbos. So let's listen to this. So therefore, Eliyahu Hanavi, the messenger of redemption, does not come on Erev Shabbos or on Erev Yom Tiv. So the Gemara says, Kasaka daitcha, maybe Eliyahu lo asa, Mashiach nami lo asi b'mal Shabbos. So lishteri. So we'll say if that's the case, we would assume based on this that the same way that Eliyahu Hanavi doesn't come on Erev Shabbos or Erev Yom Tov, therefore what? Mashiach was not going to come on that day either. We'll say if that's the case, then why does the Brisa only allow consumption of wine on Shabbos and Yom Tov? Should be on Erev Shabbos, Erev Yom Tov as well if Mashiach's not going to come. To which the Gemara says, listen to this. The Gemara says, Mashiach, Eliyahu lo asi. So we'll say no. It's only Eliyahu Hanavi who will not come on a Erev Shabbos or Erev Yom Tov. Mashiach can come on Erev Shabbos, Erev Yom Tov. V'cheivan da asi Mashiach hakol avadim hin liYisrael. We'll say when Mashiach comes, so everyone else becomes an Eved, becomes a servant of Klal Yisrael. And therefore, now what does that mean? Everyone becomes a servant. So it's not the pshat that there's servitude. What it means is Mashiach comes and the world sees HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the world sees the correctness of Torah. And the world sees the greatness of Klal Yisrael. The nations of the world will want to help Klal Yisrael. So also listen to this. So if Mashiach comes on Erev Shabbos, there's no concern of neglecting your Erev Shabbos or Erev Yom Tov preparations. Why? Because when Mashiach comes, the nations of the world will run over and say, what could we do to help out? What could we do to help out? So therefore, again, my Shabbos and my Yom Tov needs will get taken care of, even if I can't do it myself. But ultimately, again, they'll get taken care of by the nations of the world. So we'll say. So this is really very interesting. So apparently, Eliyahu doesn't come on Erev Shabbos, Erev Yom Tov, because then there's a concern of tircha, concern of difficulty for preparation of Shabbos and Yom Tov. Mashiach can come on Erev Shabbos or Erev Yom Tov. What about the tircha? No, because we assume Mashiach comes, we'll have plenty of help from the nations of the world. So the Gemara says, but the Chad b'Shabbat l'shtri. So we'll say, so again, so based on all of this, I should be able to drink wine on Friday. Why should I be able to drink wine? I'm sorry, on Sunday. So we'll say, because the fact that I can't drink wine on Sunday tells me what? The ain't tchumen. So ultimately, again, that there's no tchum l'mala miyud. The yesh tchumen b'chad b'Shabbat. Because we'll say, I'm sorry, the yesh tchumen, because if there was a tchum l'mala miyud, then what? B'chad b'Shabbat l'shtri. I should be able to drink wine on Sunday. Why? We'll say, because again, if there's tchum l'mala miyud, that means again, Eliyahu or Mashiach can't get to me ultimately again on Shabbos. And therefore, again, if Eliyahu doesn't come on Shabbos, Mashiach's not coming on Sunday. And therefore, wine consumption should be permitted under the neder. So listen to this. The Gemara says, Hi Tana, this particular Tana, Sapuki Misapkale. We'll say he wasn't sure. He wasn't sure. Does the Tchum apply Lamala Miyud? Not apply Lamala Miyud. And therefore, what? So Misapuki Misapkale, Yesh Tchum in Tchum Ulachum. So we'll say, interestingly enough, Halakha Lamaisa, this particular Tana wasn't sure. Does the Tchum apply Lamala Miyud? Does it not apply Lamala Miyud? And therefore, what? He was just Machmir. So therefore, I will say, again, do not draw any messianic conclusions from any of this particular, except again, we learn Eliyahu doesn't come on Erev Shabbos. Mashiach does come on Shabbos, Erev Shabbos. It could interestingly be enough that Eliyahu Hanavi could come, and we might not know about it yet because he might reveal himself to the Beis Din Kodol, maybe to the great Rabbanim of the generation, without to the general populace. That is possible. But in terms of the discussion regarding is there a tchum l'mala miyud or not, this Tana was unsure. So therefore, because he was unsure, it's a safek, he went l'chumra. L'chumra in this case, I will say, means that if a person makes a neder and he says, I am a neder on the day that Mashiach comes, so pretty much, again, what we say is we're not sure. So therefore, you're usher the entire week, out of doubt, but not going to be usher on Shabbos or Yom Tov. Good. To which the Gemara says, by the way, dekai imas dekanadar. When exactly is a person making this neder? Because I will say, the way this sounds when you read it is what? A person makes the neder, I'm going to become a Nazir on the day that Mashiach comes. So I will say, what it sounds like is, some days you are a Nazir, some days you're not a Nazir. Now, why is that changeable? Say, because in general, when you make a neder, that neder stays with you. There's no like one day on, one day off. So when is he making the neder? If you say he's making the neder on Monday, so then what came from the Chalal Naziros? Once the neder devolves upon the person and takes effect, the neder doesn't take a day off. In other words, we'll say, once you make the neder, there's no such thing as I make the neder on Monday. It applies Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, but not Shabbos. So the Gemara says, Ela dekai b'Shabbos v'kanadar, u'b'Yom Tov v'kanadar, v'hu yom ha'sharilei v'kan ve'ilach aser. I will say, must say that the case in question is what? Where I'm making the neder on Shabbos, or I'm making the neder on Yom Tov. Oh, so then the Brisa says, if you're making it on Shabbos, it won't take effect on that day. It'll begin on Sunday. Where you're making the neder on Yom Tov, it won't take effect on that day. It'll go ahead and take effect next day. So we'll say, so point being over here for our purposes, the Gemara does not come to resolution. It doesn't answer, is there tchum l'mala miyud or not l'mala miyud, and haloch l'maisa. Therefore, the Gemara says we rule on it l'chum. Rabbi says just do another line and we'll have to stop. So pam achas lo nichnasu l'namos. We'll say, listen to this. Remember again, next story in the Mishnah was, they were on a boat, same Rabbanim, Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Lazar, and they're entering into the port. And the Shalit Rabbi Gamliel was, are we within the tchum of the port or not? Rabbi Gamliel took out his tube, it sounds like a telescope, something, looking glass, and he was able to see, yes, we're within the port. It says the Gemara, Tana Shoveres Haisal Rabbi Gamliel, Shahayamabit Litzofe Ba'ap Hayim Ama Bi'avasha, Ukenegda Hayim Bayam. So also Rabbi Gamliel had a special tube, and through this tube he was able to measure distance, he was able to see 2,000 amas in land, 2,000 amas by sea. Harotza leida kama omko shalgai. Similarly, again, if a person wants to know the depth of a particular valley, maybe shoveres umabitba. Leida kama omko shalgai. He could use this same type of tube, look into the valley, and he can see the depth of the valley. Harotza leida kama gofo shaldai. And if a person wants to go ahead and see the height of a palm tree, modate komaso, vitzilo vitzel komaso, he can measure his own height, the height of his shadow, and the shadow of the palm tree, and you do the math, and ultimately, again, you could see the height of the palm tree. We'll just end with this. A person wants to go ahead and make sure that halacha lamaisa, an animal, they're concerned that the animal is going to dig up the grave. A person is concerned the animal is going to dig up the grave. And halacha lamaisa, again, dig up the grave. So the Gemara says, if you want to make sure that that doesn't happen, so what do you do? So no, it's kind of a dalit shows. You put a board in the grave at 4 hours into the day. You want to see where the sun is going to shine. So the Gemara says, "V'yira lahechan selno." You see where the shade goes. Mashpia va'ola mashpia. So the idea is you don't want an animal to go ahead and seek out shade in by the grave because then it's going to dig up the body. So essentially, what you do is at 4 hours into the day, you see where the shade is, and you slope the grave down in that area so the animal will not seek shade by the grave, thereby potentially going ahead and digging up the body. So we'll stop over here. Continue with this Gemara.